Workshed. Okay.
Workshed.
Workshed. Yeah, you've listened to the commentary.
I have no idea what you're talking about. Yeah. Well, we'll get to it.
Classic. We'll get there. We'll get there, Smith.
Hello, you are listening to Off Radar, It's a Movie podcast. I'm James Smith, a professional film and video editor.
I'm James Eatock, a freelance writer and illustrator specialising in 1980s cartoons.
And I'm Neil Brock, aka Nige, the man with two names, former film journalist and currently working in the games industry.
Each week, one of us picks a movie that all three of us either haven't seen in many years or in some cases haven't seen at all.
We each watch the chosen movie, return to the microphone and let you all know exactly what we thought of it.
I'd never really had any interest in watching it and I was proved absolutely right.
I think it's amazing. I really, really love this film.
The film's still a pile of steaming dog shit.
If you fancy joining in and suggesting a movie for us to watch, why not tweet us at Off Radar Podcast
or email us on offradarpod@gmail.com.
If you like what you hear, please subscribe, share, and by all means, leave a review.
For now, strap in, turn the volume up, and let's go Off Radar. Hello.
Hello.
Oh, wow.
Hello. Is there a delay?
There's a delay. there's a Nige. Welcome back to Off Radar. I'm James Smith, and as always, joined by Neil Brock.
Hail to the king, baby.
Who we call
Groovy.
Groovy.
Oh, Nige.
And
Sorry.
James Eatock.
Well, I was going to say Groovy, but I can't now because Nige did two quotes. That's rude.
Workshed.
Well, I should have said workshed.
Give me some sugar, baby.
Oh, Nige just used them all now. So, yeah hello.
Hi.
Because today we are doing a film called The Evil Dead 2, which came out... When did it come out? 1987? I didn't write it down. 1987 this film came out. This was one James Eatock recommended for us to watch.
Was it me?
Did he?
It was.
I didn't know it was me. I'm not joking. I'd forgotten it was me.
He was possessed.
Yes.
The possessed version of James Eatock recommended this film.
Yeah, you did recommend it. I think you texted me like a load of films, and this was one of them. So I selected it. And part of the reason I selected it, and I'll go straight up, I watched the first one of this film for the very first time about a year ago.
So you saw The Evil Dead?
The Evil Dead.
Wow.
And I'd never seen this one until now. So this was a first time watch for me. Well, but Nigel's holding up a DVD case of the original Evil Dead, which came out in 81. But yeah, so first time watch for me, and I've still not seen Army of Darkness.
Army of Darkness.
What? We went to the cinema to watch that, albeit it wasn't originally, it was a re-screening of Prince Charles.
Yeah, I imagine. Yeah, I take it you guys have seen this set of films before, or even two.
Interesting. I've never seen The Evil Dead.
Have you not?
Oh.
I've not seen the first one because, as we will get into... Well, if you've seen the second one, you don't, I mean, I'm not saying you don't need to see the first one, but obviously from what I know about the first one, the second one pretty much was like, yeah, let's kind of... they call this a requel, don't they? It's not a prequel.
Yeah, we'll get into this.
We will get into it, but it's interesting because when I watched the Evil Dead, I didn't know that, and I didn't know that going into watching this one. So I was expecting a sequel, so I was quite surprised when I was like, what the fuck?
What's going
happening?
on? Yeah.
I swear we left him...
Here's the interest.
Yeah,
this makes me, I guess, kind of date stamps this podcast, or me anyway. And I think maybe you'll both understand where I'm coming from with this. The first time I saw this was in the year 2000. So a good many years after
Evil Dead 2?
Yeah, Evil Dead 2. So I'd only ever, like, my dad had talked about how he'd always talked about like Bruce Campbell, saying like, oh, he's like such a fun kind of actor and he's in these horror movies and stuff. Horror wasn't my thing. I loved, like, the closest I got to that kind of genre, as it were, was probably From Dusk Till Dawn, where it was sort of like that, you could describe that as a horror comedy, right? It's
go back to listen to our podcast where we describe From Dusk Till Dawn.
Nice plug.
Yeah. So I remember, like, I bought Spaced on DVD. Spaced was a huge show in like the late 90s, early noughties. Simon Pegg, Jessica Hines, I guess her name was.
Jessica Stevenson at the time. And Edgar Wright, of course.
Edgar Wright directed. And they talked so much. Nick Frost. And they talked so much, especially Peg and Edgar Wright, about the influence of Sam Raimi. And I was just like, all right. And my friend had asked me one day, he said, there's a box set just come out for Evil Dead 2. Can you buy it for me on Amazon? So I did. So I bought it for him. And we sat there one day and watched it. And I was just like, wow, okay, I've now seen Evil Dead 2. And then I went and saw Army of Darkness. I think
interesting what you're saying there, because I think part of the reason I've not watched it is exactly the same reason you didn't, is because I'm a horror fan, but I'm not a fan of gore fest kind of horror, or, you know, like that sort of horror. So it's just never really appealed to me. But knowing, especially with, you know, the budget of the original, and, you know, like I've always been kind of interested, but it's just never been top of the list until kind of recently. We've been, you know, doing a few films on the pod, but
when did you first see it, Nige?
Well, this is the thing. Like, I cannot remember for the life of me when, where, or why I watched this film. But what I can remember is that I went to college. It would have been probably like 1999, maybe. And as part of my college, I did media production. And in the final year, the class got split into two, and we did basically, someone wrote the script, someone produced, someone directed, rest kind of acted in it, and were involved with various bits. And we did this film called like Scary Story.
Why have we not seen this?
I don't think I've got a copy of it, sadly, or gladly, depending which way you look.
Put it in the link for the podcast.
I wish I could, but there's maybe a VHS of it somewhere. But anyway, like, this film was written by someone on the course, and I thought it was terrible. But for some reason, like, I really bigged myself up in the interview for the director's role, and I got to direct it. And I thought, how can I make this film like remotely interesting? And I basically just ripped off Sam Raimi. So I must have seen Evil Dead 2 by that point.
Yeah.
And it's a film that I've had all the like Evil Dead's Army of Darkness on DVD. I had them all on VHS. So I can't remember when I watched it, but I must have been about 15, 16, 17, around that age. Huge Bruce Campbell fan. When I went to university, as part of my first year, one of the projects was like, basically research. I did journalism, do as much research and information on a random person and present it. And I thought, I'm going to do it on Bruce Campbell.
Wow.
And when I got the result back, it was a bit like, who's Bruce Campbell? Even though I provided, a lot of people went away and did like Kate Adie, like famous journalists, politicians. I did a self-confessed B-movie actor who's got a wonderful autobiography called Tales of a B-Movie Actor.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, big Bruce Campbell fan.
I don't know whether to get into the conversation yet, but it always astonishes me how he never became an A-list actor.
Oh, man.
Because he has
so much going for
him. In the 80s and 90s, one of the most, dare I say, he's such a handsome dude. He can act serious, he can act funny, he can clearly take the piss out of himself. You'd think he'd be every casting director's wet dream. It's just like,
especially around this time as well.
Oh,
right,
my God,
this
late 80s and 90s.
The action genre. So obviously Stallone, Schwarzenegger, Van Damme, and I've literally only just seen this guy, and I was thinking to myself, why did he now get picked up by Hollywood to go and star in a big action film?
I feel like Nige or something.
Well, yeah, like this sort of dives into my trivia very early, but I feel like part of it was being tarnished by Evil Dead and the fact it was this like B kind of movie horror film that got banned and all these different X-rated, certainly the first one. Sam Raimi desperately wanted him to be the lead in Darkman, but got overruled by the studio and they cast Liam Neeson instead. So he appears as like a cameo
right at the end.
And they kind of, when he was growing up, so Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell, they grew up together. Like they're friends when they were really young. They went to school together. I think there's a producer as well that was kind of part of the gang, and then obviously there was Ted Raimi as well, Sam Raimi's brother. And they always used to like make these like Super 8 films together, and they would sort of call the actors like Shemps when it was almost like just doing like a random Shemp role as part of it. And Bruce Campbell essentially became Sam Raimi's Shemp or cameo kind of guy that's in all of his films. But he was seriously considered for the role of Ian Malcolm in Jurassic Park, the one played by Jeff Goldblum.
Oh, wow.
So that could have been like career defining.
Wow, that would have.
But he did something kind of similar when he was in Congo at the beginning. I don't know if you remember that. Like, that's one of his like bigger films where he basically gets killed off right at the beginning, but he's just classic Bruce Campbell. He also was considered quite heavily for the role Richard Gere played in Pretty Woman, which would have been absolutely bonkers. I think it would have been a completely different film. And he did audition for the role, it's a bit later on, but for the role of Shooter McGavin in Happy Gilmore. So there's a few pretty significant films where it could have been him. But yeah, it was really sad that he never got the chance to do that Dartman role. And he kind of went on and did a bunch of other stuff like Bubba Hotep. He was in Tales of Briscoe County and was in a lot of like the Xenia Warrior Princess and the kind of spin-off shows related to that, but never had that kind of career breakthrough. He was in Burn Notice as well more recently, which he was fantastic in. But
I would say that the funny thing about that is, though, even though we've said like why did he never make it, in a way he made it because he's so well known in, I'd say, cult circles.
Yes.
Like, oh my god, Smith, like if you like imagine the kind of conventions and stuff that I've been to, that's the audience. Like obviously he was in some big Hollywood films. He'd make a cameo in I think every single Sam Raimi Spider-Man film. And Sam Raimi,
some big cameo roles. Like introduces Macho Man, he's the snooty usher.
Yeah. He names him Spider-Man as well.
When you look at the poster for the third one, what was it called?
Army of Darkness.
Yeah, it looks like an action figure. The way he's like, he looks.
Oh yeah, he's all buff.
He-Man.
So, is like He-Man or Schwarzenegger in Last Action Hero. That kind of look about it. So yes. So yeah, it's surprising, but yeah, I kind of knew who he was and all the rest of it just because of exactly what you said, because of that kind of cult status. But yeah, we should also, like you said, Sam Raimi obviously wrote and directed this film as he did the first one. I think it's worth pointing out right from the off, because I was reading about the original Evil Dead when I watched it. The budget for the original Evil Dead was obviously very, very small, so it's basically his first big film based on a short film. It's
they basically funded it themselves. Like they had no money at all. So yeah.
Sorry, what was the budget for the first one?
$350,000 whereas the second
made
one
$30 million.
Wow,
that is incredible for what is considered.
That's ridiculous.
And as I guess, I don't know if we'll get onto now. Maybe we should. Obviously, with the first one as well, like you said, it was around this time where video nasties were. So it got a theatrical release, but I think in different territories it had lots of edits to it. So even in the different theatrical releases, you wouldn't see the same. And I think they did for the second the same for the second as well. But then obviously it got banned, and in many countries, the first one. And kind of spawned this kind of like video nasty thing. And there's a really interesting article on the BBFC website, which I'll put in the link down below, which just basically lists a lot of these films around this 80s time that did that. But I think one of the other interesting things is almost like the comeback of this recently. I haven't seen it, but was reading about The Terrifier, for instance, which a budget of basically nothing, very similar kind of sort of roots to this, but it's picked up a massive cult following, and I think it's spawned a couple of sequels.
Outperforming some of the box office, blockbuster.
Oh yeah, this modern film. Yeah, I was just trying to think. I was like, I've never heard of it, and I was like, oh, I know what you mean. Yeah, there's apparently the second and third one are better than the first one as well, but it's like super gore kind of.
It hasn't really appealed to me, but it's obviously found an audience.
But yeah, like the video nasty thing is really interesting. This is one thing I did like study in film studies, and like banned film and shocking cinema and stuff like that. So I kind of know a little bit about that, and it is a really interesting thing, like classification in general of film
BBFC,
over the years and how that's changed, and but yeah, this was one of those.
Well, it's so crazy. Like what was considered an X movie in like the very late 70s would probably pass for a 15 now or something, if that. Yeah, it's even films with us. Us growing up have been reclassified in recent years, where it's just like, well, And I think obviously the introduction of 12 with Batman '89, when that kind of happened, that changed a lot of things, because it was like, right, you can say the word fuck in a 12 only once, but then a 15 is where you get like sex scenes, and 18 is where you get like massive amounts of, I guess, over violence and gore.
Well, it's different in the States, like, because obviously it's R and X and stuff like that as well, and it was like the death knell for any film is if you got like an X certificate or an unrated, then you would make no money, and that would be the end of you. And I think Evil Dead was lucky in the sense that one of the early people to see it was Stephen King, who then sort of did a famous interview, I think with like USA Today or the New York Times or somewhere like that, where he rated this as like one of his favorite horror films. And off the back of that, it kind of got a bit more of a following. Yeah. And it was actually him who convinced Dino De Laurentiis to actually make Evil Dead 2, because they were discussing Maximum Overdrive, the Emilio Estevez film based on one of Stephen King's books. And he said, you've got to make this film, give them the money to do it. And at the time, they wanted to actually make the Medieval Dead, Army of Darkness, but he wouldn't give them the budget for that, but did end up doing this. And because the film was going to get released as an unrated film, despite like them doing various things, I'm going major into like trivia and stuff like this, but a lot of the film, they don't show real blood, they show like green blood or black blood or like almost orange blood, because they were like, oh, if we do this, we'll be all right, we won't get an X-rated.
That's to get around that rating.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, but they said basically when it went to the people who were actually doing the rating, they said you basically need to cut this film to pieces. It'll be like 40 minutes long if you don't want it to be an X. So Dino De Laurentiis actually had to create a subsidiary company just to release this film, because he wasn't legally allowed to release it as part of his original production company. So, but I was just going to say, like, one other thing on like Video Nasties, and this kind of shows my age a little bit. So in the early-ish days of eBay, I ended up buying like a bunch of VHSs off eBay. So I remember getting like Dazed and Confused, and just films that were a bit harder to get, because I used to go to like WH Smith or like Woolies to buy like random videos. I remember buying like Rocky 3 for a $5 and being like, amazing on video.
Yeah. But I ordered this film's been deleted. It's like that's what we used to say. How has it been deleted?
But I ordered a bunch of films like at various points, and then one day this random shoebox showed up at my house, and I was like, I haven't ordered anything recently, I wonder what's in this. So I opened it, and it was filled with like Video Nasties. So it had like Driller Killer in there, like Cannibal Holocaust. I can't remember if Straw Dogs was in there, because I remember that was banned for a while as well.
Clockwork Orange, like, what's going? Is someone like trying to entrap me? If they just sent me a bunch of Video Nasties and they're going to come and arrest me. It turned out a guy I'd bought like a completely unrelated film from had just accidentally used my address rather than the person he meant to send it to. So I got to watch all these films. I lent it to a friend, Pete the Meat, a guy who appeared in one of our own kind of made films, Hardly Worth It. He was massively into his horror films, lent him these videos, and it took me ages to send the films back to this guy, because I just ended up watching them all. But that was like my exposure to Video Nasties, I suppose. So yeah, good old eBay.
It is interesting. One, I guess, final thing, what it does do is it makes them more appealing, though, doesn't it? Having like films that are banned. I remember The Exorcist, like, you know, when we were growing up, that was still banned, and thinking, I need to see this film. And I remember a friend had a pirate version that we watched like when we was like 15. But you know, it does make you want to watch it even more. So I guess that's a wider thing about censorship. But yeah,
I can't remember ever seeing any of like the original 3 Evil Deads ever being on TV, like ever. Even I've seen like the reimagined Evil Deads, although Sam Raimi's been involved in those to some degree on like Film 4 and stuff like that. I can't remember any of these ever being on TV, especially Army of Darkness.
So,
well,
Evil Dead 2. That's where we begin this episode. No, that was a really interesting chat.
Very much so.
Yeah,
synopsis time.
We need to know. What happens in this film. I'm sure it's going to be a long synopsis.
Ash and his girlfriend Linda enjoy a romantic getaway in a somewhat run-down cabin in the woods, the owners of which are currently not present. Exploring the cabin, the inquisitive Ash stumbles upon a reel-to-reel player. Intrigued, the young man plays the tape, upon which Raymond Noby, owner of the cabin, recites passages from the Necronomicon, the Book of the Dead, an ancient artifact that he uncovered during an archaeological dig. The incantation read aloud summons the Kandarian demon, a near-unstoppable evil force that kills and possesses Linda. Ash, desperately trying to escape the madness, soon realises that he cannot and must confront, with chainsaw on hand, the Evil Dead. Groovy.
Oh, nice.
Very nice.
Groovy.
4 years ago, in this quiet forest, in this cozy cabin, something happened. Something so frightening. Something so deadly. Something so evil. We prayed it would never happen again.
yeah, essentially, the first film is kind of condensed into the first 7 minutes of this film, but it's not the first film, because in the first film there's a whole gang of them.
Yes.
In this film it's just him and Linda, and that was done for budgetary reasons. They couldn't get a cast in, they couldn't get the same characters back. There was a lot of faff, and he'd actually sold the rights to Evil Dead but hadn't sold like the characters or the story or anything, which is why they were allowed to do it.
So that's why.
But yeah,
right.
So it's essentially the first film is in that first 7 minutes, him and Linda, and then it's sort of this Evil Dead 2 starts realistically when Bruce is when Ash, I should say, is possessed by the demon. He's spinning through the trees, and it all kind of goes crazy. So
I loved obviously right at the start of the film we get the kind of the Book of the Dead intro,
the opening narration
thing.
It sets the tone,
and
it's so good.
Jason and the Argonauts kind of style,
stop motion-y type.
Oh my god,
for the flipping through the books, and obviously bits that happen in the film later as well.
We get lots of that later on, but then after this, as you say, with the two of them arriving, it's kind of a classic horror film in the sense that two go away to an old deserted house in the middle of nowhere. It's been done probably in more zombie films around this time as well, but just generally in horror film. But there's you guys will know the shot. There's an amazing shot of them going over the rickety bridge, which is big wide shot, and it looks, because obviously this is 87, but the look of this film feels like it's much further back in time, the way it's kind of stylized with that kind of almost old school horror look, with the kind of rickety bridge and the kind of the aesthetic of the look of it in general.
I mean, it's in some ways in some ways the visuals are a throwback to kind of, I'd say, late 70s, early 80s. But at the same time, I think Sam Raimi's directing style was so far, infinitely far ahead of the time. It's just astonishing, this movie, what it can do. But like you say, the cliche of a couple going away to a cabin in the woods is we've seen this in many movies before. But I
feel like this was the first one, though. I feel like it became a trend because of this.
Okay, I'm not.
Because I feel like you think about sort of horror, you think the black and white horrors of the 40s, 50s, 60s, and then you kind of had the Hammer horrors and that kind of style of things. I feel like the kind of nasty horrors, which Evil Dead was one of the precursors for, this is one of the first I can remember there being a cabin in the woods, and I feel like it was sort of done to death after the first one. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's something I'm forgetting completely.
I feel like Halloween and stuff did cabin in the woods and crazy teenagers.
I guess that was more. I know what you mean. Yeah,
we're splitting hairs slightly, but I know exactly what you're saying.
But it even sets it up very well with painting his girlfriend Linda, with the blonde hair and kind of very beautiful looking and stuff like that. And obviously the way we're introduced to Bruce Campbell's character Ash, he's got this big jawline, these very large expressive eyes, almost like Johnny Bravo, but and also the light blue shirt, which he obviously wears in the first one as well, which I was like, oh man, because I watched the first one and I was like, wait a minute, why is he going back to the house again?
Again.
But he's clean and smart, but that is obviously quickly kind of messed up, and we obviously get this kind of dance scene with the two of them, which is quite romantic, and it's really well done.
What I really love about that opening thing, when we get the history of the Book of the Dead, the Necronomicon, what I love about that is we see it throughout the movie, but it's such an amazing prop. The actual prop itself. Spit, there he goes. But it's such an amazing prop. I haven't listened to the commentary probably in about 20 something years, but I'm sure they said that they basically made that and all the pages were illustrated and everything. Oh, wow. Yeah, there you go. Nige's got it.
Nige's actually got the book, which is freaky.
But I'm going to start reading it.
Yeah. But the prop itself is it's got all the text on, it's got all these illustrations, but it's all beat up. It's like they've put so much work into this single prop, and it's like, man, if that prop still exists, it must be worth a fortune. But the funny thing is, watching this movie, like I say, for the first time in the year 2000, wasn't my first exposure to the Necronomicon, because there's an episode of The Real Ghostbusters.
Of course there is.
Of course there is. Called, it's like it's called the Collect Call of Cthulhu because the Necronomicon and Cthulhu and all that whole stuff comes from the kind of pulp writings of H.P. Lovecraft and writers of that sort. They were like the fancy writers that inspired so much of what you see in films, like everything. You've got your mythology of the Greeks and the Norse and all that stuff, but when it comes to the horror aspect, all of the horror you see, like especially like monsters and stuff, all finds its origins in the works of H.P. Lovecraft. And like I say, the writers of the real Ghostbusters were like influenced by that. Sam Raimi, definitely a fan of all that because that's where this comes from. You don't just magically conjure the Necronomicon into your work without having a love of the pulp magazines and the works of H.P. Lovecraft. So it's I love that attention to it. It's like they really do. It's used as a prop, but they celebrate it. And and like the opening 5 minutes of this, when he plays the reel-to-reel player, which is always great to see a classic reel-to-reel player. My nan used to have one. They were great, like, and you play it.
I think that's the only prop that kind of got reused from the first film to the second.
Yeah. Oh, right, okay.
Cabin and all sorts. But anyway, you were saying.
But no, you get the reel-to-reel player, and obviously by playing the spell read aloud, we get the demon conjured up.
A thing of evil that roams the forests and the dark bowers of man's domain.
Sam Raimi's direction, I think, is phenomenal. He's like one of my favourite directors in terms of he directs like a comic book would look. Like it's all about angles, and you can tell, Sam Raimi. You've seen him in interviews and stuff over the years. He's like a proper super talented geek. He loves film. He, like Tarantino, loves film, loves comics and all that. And with his directing, like the use of angles for the most banal of shots, but also how we don't see a fucking demon like attacking any, like we don't see this monster's spirit or ghost or effects. It's just camera. It's just the use of camera.
That
and it's
point
like
of view shot, which is drifting through the woods,
which is called the Evil Dead shot. Like that is what people call it. It's like Sam Raimi, and it's the shot I ripped off when I made Scary Story, and like we even put the Evil Dead sound over the top, kind of going through the forest. Like it is. I love it, and like you say, the angles that he uses for like close-ups and the constant use of close-ups
of eyes and stuff like that.
Yeah, and the fact they did so much like handy cam, just moving around. Like he's an absolute artist, and you can see. Even in like the kind of Marvel films he did, like the Doctor Strange, called, like you can see his style. Like no matter what kind of genre film he does, he did The Quick and the Dead, a western. He's done comic book style movies like Darkman and Spider-Man. He did. Obviously, he's done these Evil Dead films. He did like A Simple Plan. Even in that, there's Sam Raimi's style is evident in everything he does.
It's funny you mentioned that Doctor Strange movie because that went through obviously production hell because they were trying to bury his style. And it's and it's like, well, good luck with that. If you want to make a studio film or you want to make a sound, because there's going to be a lot of people obviously attending because it's a Marvel film, but there's a lot. My friend and I went because it's like we love Sam Raimi. It's just like, oh my god, Sam Raimi's directing a Marvel film, and there were times when you could see he was being reined in, but for the most part, if you watch that movie, there's still a lot of what makes Doctor Strange. It almost becomes like a zombie, and it's all Sam Raimi's work, as in like hiring the right people, but it's his vision. And like one of my favourite shots in the opening thing where I just paused it and I was like, dear God, that's beautiful, is when he buries Linda. You've got a Dutch tilt, the lights behind him, and he stood there with like this. It's just like, that's every shot of this you could turn into a poster for this movie or something. It's hard to like express how phenomenal it is. Like when he does a Hollywood movie like Spider-Man 2, one of my favourite superhero movies of all time, when he does that movie, you can see where he's being reined in, but at the same time, certain things, like, I know we're not reviewing Spider-Man 2 here, but there's certain things in that movie where it's like, no other director would have done this. There's a scene with, I'm thinking about it now, Peter Parker and Mary Jane are in a cafe, and Dr. Octopus is approaching. All you hear is these footsteps, like the squid arm footsteps kind of thing. And the camera just shakes, but every time it shakes, it kind of it trucks into them. And it's like, that's him. You can't bury that talent no matter how much the studio wants to. And it's his use of practical effects as well.
Has he used the same like DOPs?
I was just thinking that, right?
Must have.
DOP, you would think has such a big influence on a film, but like you say, like Sam Raimi, is the director, but the DOP usually will come up with the kind of the stylistic part of it. But he's come from a background with The Evil Dead, which, you know, it was him that did it all. So you would think that Sam Raimi has such a big influence over the kind of that creative sense.
Well, his vision is clear in all of his work. Like, what he wants to see on screen is clearly him.
And
like,
that's
don't get me wrong,
even down to like the house is like a character in this film. It's, you know, it's like this
beautifully
old
put
bungalow. It's broken and wooden and
it's a bungalow.
It's like
it has eyes at one point. They sort of put over the top, demonic eyes.
But there's a shot like right near the end of the film where they're outside and the light is coming from within the house, and you know, like that kind of stuff. But even the trees, like the design of those, and I don't know if this is him or not, but they look like incredibly sinister as those kind of you know, like comic, like almost like painting, like the way they're designed and the all of that. But we obviously get the scene near the front where like you said, like he kills her with the spade when she gets possessed, and does this kind of like weird, like sort of stop motion-y
she rises from the dead.
Dance. I was going to say that's a little bit further on because he buries her. He kind of like he gets possessed.
He goes to escape.
He actually he gets possessed fully. He has the white eyes and the sort of the eyes that are sunken in, and then the sun shines on him, and then he comes back, tries to escape, comes back to the bridge that's kind of curled back on itself. It's an amazing shot of him. Just
great shot.
Like he knows he can't escape, and then he comes back, and Linda returns.
I think that. Sorry, I'm now going back after pushing us forward, but the shot where he gets possessed. He's flying through the air, and the camera is literally a point of view in there, and it's kind of like going.
He's clearly on some sort of thing that's spinning him, but at the same time, the cameras done. And it's all done at a certain frame rate so they can speed through, and it's just.
But as the audience as well, you're like, oh my god, well, if he's getting possessed, where's this film going to go as well? You know, like because like you say,
it's game over kind of thing.
Big eyes.
Yeah. I was to say when Linda comes back from the dead, and like we were talking about, he's clearly influenced by. Well, I mean, it's Sam Raimi. He grew up at the time when Ray Harryhausen movies were. I mean, they were when I grew up. Like all the rage. It's like, oh my god, stop motion skeletons, and you get this
Jason the Argonauts.
Jason the Argonauts. You get Linda and like her hair. She's doing this. It's really like clever. The ballet. She's doing the thing to the music, and
her head kind of rolls off, and she's using it as a prop. And it's like what?
But the bit when the thing that always makes me laugh, and it's it's that thing of this is where it's like perfectly doing horror comedy, where she's at the window and she's like pulling him. She keeps pulling him towards the thing.
That's Bruce Campbell just slamming his head into
the thing.
Just a couple of random arms coming through.
Do you fancy sending us a film to review, or letting us know your thoughts on a film that we have discussed? All of your comments will be read out in our end of season leaderboard episode. Email us on offradarpod@gmail.com, tweet us at offradarpodcast, message us on Facebook. All links and info in the description down below.
Do it! Do it!
That's where he heads to the work shed. The reason that Smith's sort of like, why do you keep saying work shed? I'm sure Nige is doing the same thing. I can't remember the exact actor who called it out. It might be Kurt Russell or someone.
Yeah, so Kurt Russell's son was a huge Evil Dead fan, They used to watch it all the time. And many years later, Bruce Campbell worked on a film with Kurt Russell, a John Carpenter film, in fact, Escape from LA. Yeah. He's like a crazy scientist. And literally the first thing Kurt Russell said when he met Bruce Campbell, you went up to him and said, please say work shed for me. And he's like, what? And it's obviously from Evil Dead 2. But do you know more about that, Ito? Why?
Well, it's an 80-yard line, isn't it?
Exactly.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Because if you look, like Bruce Campbell's he's like, and then he just goes, work shed. But it's well done enough that you wouldn't notice. But when you do notice, it's funny because he looks to the door because he's obviously going to need to go somewhere. But it's just like, work shed. It always kills me every time.
Work shed. I never noticed it until I kind of heard about. I can't remember when I heard sort of Kurt Russell.
Mine was the commentary. The commentary was what did it for me. I was just like, and then my friend and I.
I remember I've watched a few Kurt Russell commentaries, like for The Thing and I think Big Trouble in Little China, and they're always brilliant entertainment, brilliant fun. I'm not someone who's like, you should go watch the director's commentary because they're normally really dry, but Kurt Russell ones and Bruce Campbell ones are both amazing. Bruce Campbell for Bubba Hotep, where he plays basically an elderly Elvis who fights like mummies or whatever it is, did an entire director's commentary as Elvis for Bubba Hotep, so that's worth watching as well. But it's just it's mad. Like, Bruce Campbell is a tremendous actor. And we kind of mentioned the hand getting possessed. The amount of physical comedy / action that Bruce Campbell is amazing.
Are you kidding me?
Basically, he kind of wrestles his own hand.
When he's smashing plates on his own head.
The plates.
But it was all improv. It was all like Bruce Campbell, first take, they ended up nearly using all of it because he just like, basically attack yourself with your hand, go for it. And that's what Bruce Campbell did, and that's how good a kind of impromptu artist he is, I suppose. But yeah, it's just crazy.
It's how that starts. One thing before we get into the hand thing, I love that there's a section of this film where, and I fucking love it for this, where they were just like, right, he's in a house. What crazy things can we have happen to him? It doesn't tell a story, really. It's just this man getting attacked by the house. And it's hilarious. I mean, it's hilarious, terrifying, and everything. The mirror gag, I still think, is one of the most fantastic things where but it's at first you don't realise, because he walks up to the mirror and he's like, okay, and then he comes out from the mirror, because obviously the actor in the foreground is someone else, but you don't know that because he's like, well, he's looking at a mirror, and then the camera pulls back and he's just strangling himself and he's like, and then the hand starts smashing the plates over his head at one point.
Which is comical, isn't it? And
it's so well done.
It's comical, yeah.
I would say there's lines in this though where it's not, it's more horror than comedy, but then there's parts where are more comedy than horror. It kind of like goes between the two at different moments, because there are jump scares. I wouldn't say it's a scary film by any means, but there are.
To me, it's Ghostbusters. To me, this is that same
sort of. Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, like.
It can scare in moments, but for the most part, it's that the best way I can describe it. It's almost like a comic book version of horror, whereas something like the Halloween movies or Psycho is either obvious, like these are more, or at least for me, I put this in the same genre as Ghostbusters. It's that thing of you get like it sounds weird. It's almost like a nice feeling watching this movie.
Yeah, it's like a cartoony response to certain things. Like there's a power of suggestion as well. Like I think like when he puts Linda's head in a vice and gets a chainsaw on it, you see him just doing it with the shadow, and quite often you see the blood like splashing on things and things like that. It's done really well. And even the bit where like the body's chasing and kind of it falls back on itself and it's splurting out all this black blood. It's so over the top that it's not like realistic at all. And again, there's a bit later in the film when a guy gets dragged into the cellar and suddenly this like tidal wave of blood comes out, and it's always like, I'm someone who is not like big on gore. Like we discussed like the Substance quite recently, and it was just like, for me it was horrible. There was a run of films like Hostel and a few others, and obviously the Saw films where I was just like, this isn't for me. At no point do I look at this film and watch this film and think this is gore, this is over the top. There's bits that like might make certain people uncomfortable, but it's always got that tinge of like humor and like silliness because of Bruce Campbell and because of Sam Raimi's style and because of the way they've kind of done it, and the fact that some of the creatures look quite latexy but still look menacing, and they're having fun as well. Swallow yourself, just like silly bits.
I think you're right. I think the kind of scarier parts are the more nuanced bits, like when you just hear a sound or see anything, but they're using that technique, like with the kind of like Etok said, with the kind of point of view kind of scary tree shot. That's more scary than any of the kind of like gore, as it were, in kind of inverted commas. But that's all like in the setup, and because the setup's so small, you would say that most of the kind of, until I guess you get the other characters that come into it, where it almost like starts again in a certain sense.
Yeah, it's just Bruce Campbell by himself in a house, like just and like a tour de force for like half an hour at least.
For the obviously I've not seen this film before, so I thought this is going to be the whole film. It's going to be basically Bruce Campbell like literally like fending off the dead for an hour and a half, and I was like, oh, okay, well, you know, is this going to get a bit tiresome after a while? So I'm pleased that they brought these other characters into it. But you're right, like I Swallow Your Soul, that bizarre monster creature. I think
basically
this is
the guy's wife who lives in the cellar, who gets possessed first of all when he starts reading, translating
the head
the book.
thing. You know, it's like we've seen with other kind of horror films with almost Cronenberg, like Carpenter-ish, like kind of prosthetics.
And that's the strength of this movie, is that everything is practical. You know, you get don't get me wrong, obviously you get certain effects and stuff, but it's, you know, it's all done by hand. It's like any good movie of like the 70s and 80s and 90s where, getting me wrong, computers start coming into play, but they're trying to figure it out on the job, and that's what you sometimes get. You sometimes get things that don't work. Most of the time you get things that really do work. Like, we're going back to, you know, talking about the kind of mood of this movie. What the scene that I love it so much, and it's both horrific, funny, but it's so cleverly directed as well, as when he chops off his hand, where the hand's dragging him towards a knife.
Yeah.
And but it's like the hand's dragging him, and again, so well done. There obviously someone's pushing him up, but every time the hand like drags him towards, he's unconscious, the hand's dragging him towards the knife because the hand wants to kill himself, and like suddenly a knife goes into the hand, and it's Bruce Campbell. He's like, it's one of my favourite lines. I've still got this WAV file on my computer since I think like the year 2000 or 2001. It's just where he stabs his hand. He's like, that's right.
Who's laughing now?
And then he gets the chainsaw, and he's like, who's laughing now? All the blood splaying in its face, and it's all you're seeing is just Bruce Campbell's face getting showered in blood. But again, it's
the roar
horrible,
of the chainsaw,
it's funny, it's everything, and his face like rah! And again, another thing that always makes me laugh, one of the scenes, it's again, I've got this image on my computer, I've had it like I say 25 years on my computer. It's the bit when the house starts, all the moose, the deer head starts laughing.
It's so
everything's
great.
laughing, but that look to camera he does, where everything's laughing, and he just does this insane close-up of him. It's like obviously a wide shot, but it's his face in close-up, and he's just like got this manic look where he starts laughing, and then he goes back and he starts dancing with the lamp and stuff, and then he just, but then again, what I love about that acting there is his laughter turns into like this despair of like, I'm trapped here in this loony bin, this house that's gone crazy. So good.
But
it's
then,
just like,
from the outside, he's someone who's gone to a cabin and murdered his girlfriend.
that's so good.
And like you said, Smith, some characters come into this film.
They're like, what the fuck?
And they potentially think that. And also, like, her parents, because one of the people that shows up is the daughter and her boyfriend, basically, who went on the expedition to first get the Book of the Dead from the castle, the archaeological site. And they get, because the bridge is down, two local hicks know of a route up to the cabin, and they take him there. And then suddenly we go from Bruce Campbell alone in this madhouse to not only has 4 new people come in, but there was people there all along that we weren't aware of, hence the lady in the cellar.
It's funny how they, like, when they get there, they obviously accuse him of, like,
which you understand.
There's a chainsaw covered in blood.
He's covered in blood. There's a chainsaw.
So they shove him in the cellar, where the one place where he shouldn't be. But what's
there's something down here
interesting about the lighting as well. You know, like shooting dark scenes is, you know, hard, but even harder in like low budget films, and they do it really well in the original for such a terrifyingly
I know
small
from Scary
amount.
Stories, shooting in the dark is a nightmare. So
but what they do really well is light the characters so they never appear dark, if that makes sense.
No, I know what you're saying.
You know, considering the whole film is pretty much in night, but they light it really well, but it always feels like it's the right amount of light. You don't feel like you need to shut your curtains and turn the TV contrast up.
It's not overexposed. It's not, it doesn't look Hollywood where they would put a bloody filter over it, or it looks all very natural. That's the scary thing. That's the crazy thing about it. It's you know, it's lit in an unnatural way, but it all looks so natural because, like you say, there's no real lighting in this place. It's a cabin in the woods. It should be pretty dark, and the characters should be in shadow a lot. But they light it in such a good way that you don't question it. Like, to the point where I wasn't even thinking about it till you brought it up.
Well, it's funny, actually. We've mentioned Bruce Campbell a lot, but we haven't talked about any other cast member. Normally, when we do these podcasts, straight away at the beginning, we're like, oh, here's the writer, here's the director, here are the actors. All the other actors, I would say, aren't particularly well known, haven't really been in anything else, which is the case with Evil Dead as well, I would say. Like, no one from that. The only one I would say is fairly well known is Ted Raimi, who is the woman in the basement, and he's essentially, I think they said the only thing of his you can actually see that is his own is like his tongue or something, because he's in a giant like rubber suit essentially, sweating profusely because apparently there was a big heat wave at the time when they were filming this. And there's one bit when he flies across the room and the sweat is coming out of the suit. It's horrible. It must have been pretty harsh. So yeah.
I read about that. There's a scene that comes fairly soon after this, which I thought was incredible, where the woman gets taken
the tree.
by the forest, and it
so
kind
good.
of wraps around her. But what you were talking about earlier, you talk about the kind of the quick cuts and the crash zooms. This is a perfect example of this, because you see like the shots of her hands, and there's one shot of her eye, but it almost feels like it's sped up the way it's done, but I don't think it is, where her eye goes and then you see the thing kind of going across her, and the branches basically taking over and almost like eating her alive. But it's incredibly well done.
I think originally I remember hearing like one of the reasons it was almost considered like Evil Dead as well, like Video Nasties, there was talk about the tree raping a girl kind of thing, and that was I always remember hearing that when I was a kid, and I was like, whether or not there was some stuff they cut out of it, I don't think it's that bad, but it's really well done, I would say.
That's like a proper horror moment, I think, because there's no kind of like, oh, that's silly or funny. It's like, oh, this is horrific. This woman,
and she just screams for a lot of it as well.
Yeah, just like, oh, poor Bobby Joe. Yeah,
and
Barbara Joe.
Yeah, we obviously get the moment where he gets totally possessed as well after this, I think, where we see those big white eyes and the
which look really uncomfortable.
They do.
Yeah, apparently they couldn't see anything and like had to just act based on rehearsing a hell of a lot. So yeah, they're pretty gruesome, I think.
But it's interesting they emphasise his eyes even more, because when you see him,
they sink them. The way the eyes are sunken, they kind of got the build on top of it. But sorry, go on, Smith.
No, I was just going to say, when you see him normally, I was like, one of my first notes was, huge wide eyes, and we've talked about it particularly with female actors, I would say.
Yes, we have. Emma Stone,
Not necessarily with male actors as much, but he does have these huge eyes. So what they choose to do when they do these effects is play on that to give him these white eyes, and they're totally white, so it's like you say, if he couldn't see anyway, but yeah, really, really well done.
But it's interesting, like in that scene before he turns back, obviously you've got the other people that have come in, the girlfriend, the boyfriend, and then like the Hicks girlfriend, boyfriend, and you kind of think this blonde dashing chap is going to come in and be a bit of a hero, and I think he like punches one of the demons when she escapes and stuff like that, and then he gets thrown across the room, and then within minutes he's a demon.
He's possessed, and
then he's like biting one of the girls' hair and eating their hair, and he's got like weird like stuck out sort of mouth and jaw, and just looks absolutely crazy. And it's like, another sort of diversion of like, oh, these people are gonna like be helpful, and immediately it's like, no, he's now possessed and he's just another problem they've got to deal with.
I do like the daughter character. I do obviously she's the only other real character that we care about is the daughter of the
very
Annie
backstory with her.
Annie, played by Sarah Berry, who retired 2 years after this film was released from acting. She was in like nothing else.
I bet she's been at conventions and stuff, because I'm sure she could sign photos.
She's done a little bit, but I just tried to have a look, so I was like, she looks so familiar, but I've seen her in nothing, and she looks like kind of almost like a Blue Peter presenter or something like that.
Obviously, one scene we got to talk about, I know Nige will want to talk about, is when he and Annie go to the work shed, and he decides, well, I've got no hand because I just sawed it off because I'm going to put the chainsaw on. And he does the whole suit up thing, puts his, and he's like again, all armoured up, and the camera zoom.
You got to see the Army of Darkness one as well.
I might watch it after this, to be honest, but
you should. You
should.
I think you'll really enjoy Army of Darkness, Smith. It's silly. It's much sillier in terms of like it's a real real comedy. If this is
more
horror
like
comedy,
Jason and the Argonauts, that
Yes.
kind of style
Right,
film.
yeah.
very much so.
Well,
But
obviously,
the cameras.
Chainsaw is a really interesting thing as well, because Texas Chainsaw Massacre was 70 something, right? And that film was banned. Another film that was banned. So the fact that they've chosen to use a chainsaw at all in this sort of film is brave, because it's always any chainsaw in a film is gonna be related to Leatherface, like you said.
Well, using violence as well.
Exactly.
It's
So
like
you're almost like
using a
setting
chainsaw.
up, but it's such a prominent part of his character having this in this film.
And again in Army of Darkness as well.
Yeah.
But what I loved is when he first goes to get it, you just see the drawn outline of like the chalk line almost.
Yes.
And then suddenly the demon comes in with the chainsaw. You're like, oh my God, Ash hasn't got the chainsaw. I completely forgot that bit and was like, oh, that's brilliant.
But yeah, he suits up. We get the groovy. Even when he says, when he delivers the line groovy, it always makes me laugh, because it's like he does it and he kind of lingers on it a second. It's so well done.
Obviously, he hasn't actually got that much dialogue in this film when you think about it, has he? Because for a lot of it,
I think that's the strength. The strength of his acting is you know his character. You know so much about him, and it's like,
because there's no setup right at the beginning, really.
No,
you barely get like a lot of dialogue. Most of this film is done through like we say, like acting, like visually through
set pieces and stuff like that.
Visuals, eyes, all of that. But even when he interacts with the other four characters, I feel like I don't remember many long conversations or anything. It's just like bang bang.
It's
bang.
really interesting how Ash Williams as a character develops over time. In this film, like he is obviously, he almost goes crazy. There's a bit, but he's a hero. He's battling the evil dead. There's a bit where he runs out and the daughter's like, "You filthy coward, where are you going?" And he comes back with an axe and like takes them all out. And then in Army of Darkness, like, not too many spoilers, but you realise actually there's a part of his character, he's a bit of a dick. And then like he works in like S-Mart, it's like in a convenience store and all this kind of stuff. And then as a follow-up to this, there was the Ash vs Evil Dead TV series, which
I've still never seen properly.
Yeah, I've never seen it all the way through, to be honest, but I've watched a lot of it, and it's very good. And yeah, again, his character changes, but in this film, like you said, he doesn't actually develop his character that much, and I think it kind of works for this film in that sense. Like you say, just like the knowing looks, the way he's just caught up in this absolutely bonkers situation, but there's not really a backstory beyond he's with his girlfriend and she obviously ends up decapitated, chainsawed. So yeah.
I think it still hits that even though we don't know much about her character, we know as much as we need to. When Annie dies and like her last heroic act is reading the spell to kind of send the demon back through a portal through a dimensional gate.
Yeah, she gets stabbed in the back by Ash's decapitated hand. The kind of knife of the dead.
And she does this, like, it's her last heroic act, and then she dies. It's like, oh man, I understand why they kill her off, kind of thing, but it's just like, but I guess she kind of served that part of, her journey was to kind of be there and kind of, undo her father's work, as it were. Her father was, intrigued in, I want to see what we do if we read this spell, and her role is, I need to undo my father's work, and also
release his soul that's now been possessed.
Release his soul, of course. But then we get Ash. I like that bit when Ash walks up to her, and it's such an Ash thing. He's like, "You did good, kid," something like that. He's just he calls her kid. It's just like, no. And then Ash ends up. Oh, don't jump in.
I don't think so. I think there's just a series of massive, great fights, really, aren't there, against loads of
giant, just sort of tree demon sticks his face through the door.
Well, that's
and his hair turns white. That's always I always love that visual,
thing, because it's obviously got the faces in it as well, which is like
the souls,
including Ash's by the looks of things.
Yes, I noticed. I don't think I'd ever clocked that before, but I was like, that's Ash's face.
But is that because he sees that in the mirror earlier or something? I don't know.
It's because he's been possessed multiple times. So it's like the battle between his souls kind of half taken, I suppose. So, yeah.
But that giant tree thing's really well done.
It's such a good prop.
It's it's really convincing the way it kind of breaks into the house, and actually a lot of this film takes place in the house as well. It's not a lot outside. There are some outside scenes outside it, but generally speaking, a lot of these horror moments are contained, which gives you that sense of suffocation and being kind of almost stuck in this place, but in obviously a fairly funny way. But he is obviously the last one standing. He is that action hero at the end of this film, and he's very much presented as an action hero in this film, which is a really interesting choice for a horror film, because I don't think you normally present your
That's
hero
a good point.
like an action.
That's a good point.
It's normally just about survival, isn't it? But with Ash, it's almost like he almost gets like he's just great at taking out demons, and almost gets this. And again, this is something that gets elaborated on sort of further on into like the Evil Dead you go, but he's almost like a chosen one. And obviously they kind of mention that in the book.
We see
there's
the
a great
page.
hero, like who's kind of does something.
That illustration of the book is so good, because it's a bloke in a blue shirt with a chainsaw up in the air.
Yeah.
And it's just like,
and then at the end, he gets sucked into an interdimensional,
like that
like a time portal
thing.
And dumped in medieval times.
I do love the ending to this movie, because it is just like, I mean, that shot, which it's been a while since I've seen Army of Darkness, but I think just the Oldsmobile just like falling out of the sky is such a great shot.
But then you can
like,
kind of see the padding that he falls on, and then later on it's like, as in Ash's character, there's like, you see like almost like the beds that break his forward. That's paving that's kind of like stone or something. And it's like, no, it just looks like a mattress. But
it's interesting though. But obviously the end. I haven't seen Army of Darkness, but I know really kind of what it's about. But they choose to like basically put him in the polar opposite kind of place to where he's just been, a dark, desolate house, to medieval times, sand, light, loads of people in armour. It's almost like the polar opposite. So you're like, whoa, that's quite a shock to the system after just like...
Yeah.
I feel like this is a good time for some Nige trivia.
Yeah, I could go on for quite a long time.
It's going to be a lot.
Maybe give us a condensed version.
Absolutely, for the sake of everyone. So there's a lot of interesting stuff about this, I would say. Like, the film was written by Spiegel and Raimi. Basically, they're in a house living in Silver Lake, LA, California. And their flatmates make for very interesting reading. So they were living at that time with not only the Coen brothers.
Francis
McDormand, who was obviously ended up marrying one of the Coens. Kathy Bates as well, and Holly Hunter. And Holly Hunter was actually the primary inspiration for the Bobby Joe character. And the reason being, when Raimi was living with her, she was auditioning for a hooker part and was unusually made up, like really sexy, short skirt, all that kind of thing. And she kind of got a bit angry when Sam Raimi leered at her, and he thought, oh yeah, that is perfect for a role in this film. And he actually wanted Holly Hunter to play the part, but the studio said they wanted someone sexier. So they didn't cast her in the end, which seems a bit ridiculous and a missed opportunity. but yeah, and something else about the Evil Dead films as well. Like, I think in the very first one, there's like a mention to like The Hills Have Eyes, and then I don't know if you guys remember seeing in A Nightmare on Elm Street on the TV, they're actually watching The Evil Dead, and then there's almost an homage back to Nightmare on Elm Street when he first goes into the tool shed and he's carving like his girlfriend's head with a chainsaw. There's Freddy Krueger's glove hanging above the door, so there's like a little nod towards A Nightmare on Elm Street as well, which I thought was pretty cool. And I mentioned earlier as well, like Stephen King being a huge fan of this film, he became great friends with Sam Raimi. Raimi was in like the TV version of The Shining that he did. Like, they've had a good relationship ever since, and it was because of him that really this film got made. So again, it's nice to see that sort of horror connection, I suppose. Something else as well, like originally the idea for this film, as I said, it was going to be the medieval Dead that we get in Army of Darkness, but they couldn't get the budget. There was also at one point going to be a group of like basically Ash being kept captive in the cabin by a bunch of escaped convicts searching for hidden treasure or buried treasure. And actually Bobby Joe's death with the tree was originally supposed to be a man and was going to be much more violent, to the fact that they would have essentially been split in half by this tree. So that was one of the early scripts that kind of got changed. But yeah, obviously it ended up the way it was, which I think was pretty good, to be fair. Also, there's this kind of this kind of like common misunderstanding about the kind of the Evil Dead shot, I suppose, where the evil force runs through. There was a bit of a story about how Sam Raimi was filming it on a motorcycle and drove into Bruce Campbell and actually broke his jaw, which is obviously pretty full on. And that's what people have kind of been talking about for years. But they actually corrected him and said, well, actually, that shot was kind of done more so for the first film. He just kind of recycled it.
Yeah.
But the story about him breaking his jaw was actually something made up by Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell as a gag to see how many people would believe it. Wow. And the reality of the shot was it was just Sam Raimi running through the forest with the camera mounted on his head whilst the crew members like pulled the doors open with ropes. And obviously that was the way they kind of filmed it for both films. And again, they were really inventive in how they shot a lot of this stuff. And like Etok said at the start, like way ahead of the curve, I suppose, for a lot of this as well. There's a lot of obviously comedy in this film, mainly through Bruce Campbell, but there's some visual puns as well. Like one of the points where the hand gets trapped in where it's going crazy, Ash like tries to slam a book on it. One of the books that he tries to do it with is A Farewell to Arms, the Ernest Hemingway. So very nice pun there. Etok mentioned ever so briefly the Oldsmobile as well, which is a car that essentially appears in pretty much every single Sam Raimi film, and it was in the original film because basically it was his dad's car. They needed a car, they had it in, and he said had it in every film since. And I was looking, there's like a website that kind of lists them all.
You said it was in The Quick and the Dead, right? As like half of it or something.
Oh, yeah, no one's really identified where it is in Quick and the Dead. Apparently it was underneath like a sheet on the back of one of like the like a horse and cart kind of thing. But in this one, you kind of see it fall out of the sky. It plays an extremely prominent role in Army of Darkness as well. So look forward to that, Smith. Yeah. It's like the car that his uncle drives in Spider-Man. It's in Darkman. It's in Drag Me to Hell as a car in that as well. It flies through the sky in Doctor Strange as well. And it's even in the Evil Dead remake, which Sam Raimi didn't direct, but they still used it anyway.
In that?
He was like produced it essentially, and obviously gave his blessing to it as well. So good old Oldsmobile. And like Bruce Campbell mentions it in his autobiography as well. And like, it was necessity because the film was low budget. That's why it was in the original Evil Dead. And it's not even like versions of that car. It's still the same car has been in all of them as well. So, and then just the last one, we kind of mentioned there's potentially different versions of the Evil Dead. There's like a fan cut that was released on a DVD, but there's not that much left of the original work print. Apparently there was a 36-minute work print of the film that had like very early versions of it, but there was a bunch of scenes that apparently were filmed but then deleted. So some of these were Henrietta when she's in the rocking chair, so that's the wife of the archaeologist. When he's reading the incarnations, her demonic eyes are unveiled in the cabin's light. There's one where like Linda's severed head throws up black bile on Ash, which we kind of see the black bile around her mouth, but we don't see where it came from. She has like a snake-like tongue at one point into Ash's mouth. That bit's not shown. There's an extended take of the blood flow with like green and yellow blood coming into it as well when it's like pouring into the house. An extended sequence of the half-headed Ed running after characters, and eventually he's chopped to pieces with all his body parts flopping on the floor. I can see why they probably cut that for trying to get the ratings, but they didn't. A possessed Ash eating a live squirrel after he runs after Anne in the forest, and then his demonic face morphing back to normal after there's a nice like poignant bit where he looks at the necklace that used to be Annie's, used to be his girlfriend's, and he kind of looks at that, but that bit was cut as well. But yeah, all these deleted scenes don't actually exist. They're impossible to get. They're not on, at least to my knowledge, aren't on any like the DVDs or the Blu-rays or anything like that. There's good making of, there's director's commentary, but a lot of those scenes unfortunately are lost and were never found. Wow. And then the very last bit of trivia, we kind of mentioned the giant head, the rotten apple head, the crazy effect that kind of sticks his head through the cabin. Apparently it was too large and cumbersome for the crew to actually take back after it was filming, so it was just left in North Carolina where they filmed the film. And like many years later, everyone was like, whatever happened to it? Turns out it ended up in a Halloween haunted house attraction just outside the original shooting, and someone like stumbled across it and was like, is that the giant head from Evil Dead 2? And they were like, yeah, someone gave it to us, honest. So yeah. I will also say, this isn't, I suppose this is trivia, like Evil Dead was incredibly successful film. We said it made like it cost 350k to make, 30 million. This film, £3.5 million $1 million budget, only made $6 million. So it wasn't that successful at the cinema, but like we've kind of mentioned a couple of times, it was huge as a cult film. I imagine like DVDs, rentals, videos, all that kind of stuff is where the success really took off. And but I don't think the Evil Dead films, whilst they're in cult circles, are huge and people love them, I don't think it's ever had that like widespread appeal. No. Even like Ash vs. the Evil Dead got cancelled before it kind of got finished. It was on Stars, which wasn't a particularly big network. It never got picked up by any like the major ones. It's always been on that kind of undercurrent. Hence, like Bruce Campbell has always been on that kind of like undercurrent, never quite the mainstream stuff. And even like Sam Raimi's done a bunch of successful films. I think he's the one who's kind of stepped away from it and done a lot more. But everything else to do with Evil Dead's always been that the thing the cool kids know about, but not necessarily every kid.
Did you know you can now subscribe to Off Radar It's a Movie podcast on YouTube? You can watch exclusive trailers and listen to brand new full episodes. All links and info in the description down below.
Somebody stop me!
It also feels like the sort of films that the more you watch, the more you enjoy as well. I get the feeling,
Jesus,
after watching it once, I feel like, you kind of want to watch it again.
I would never tire of watching this movie. I've watched it a lot, and I could watch it tomorrow. It's like, for me, it's like Ghostbusters. It's one of those movies that I can just watch over and over again.
Go on,
I know Ghostbusters
from here because you're.
I mean, you know where I'm going with this fucking review. It's weird to describe this movie as beautiful, but I think it really is. I think whilst the story is as basic as any story can be, I think it's just, the story is what it is, but it's got, because they tap into that whole Necronomicon thing, it's not just like evil monster in the woods. They build this lore behind it, especially with that opening narration. So there's lore behind this, behind the story, behind the baddie of the movie, as it were, the antagonist. Then you got like Bruce Campbell, who, like, I know we've sung the praises for, but I think this is perfect. I always hate saying, oh, he was made for this role, but I can't imagine anyone else in this movie, like being in this movie and being able to do what he does, which is play it both straight and funny and all these different things. It's like, to show maybe some people, they'll be like, oh, it's just a bloke in a house, but it's like, it's as Nige said, it's like him acting himself. It's just himself in a house against props. It's him against
like Chaplin or something like that.
My God, what a great thing! What a great comparison. Yeah, Chaplin is like, this. Everyone knows of Charlie Chaplin's work, and it was just him with his mannerisms and everything. It's the same with Bruce Campbell. He's acting. You get like actors these days. Oh, I'm acting against green screen, but with this, it's like this man is acting against props that he can see and touch and feel. He does such a good job. Sam Raimi, I think, is an incredible director. It's like, I think this film is beautiful visually. The gore, I think, works because it's when you get that practical effects in use, as we've talked about, you see a lot of trial and error on screen. I think that works as well. Like the blood is so over the top. Like we talked about it right at the start, but when the hillbilly is dragged in and the blood is just spewing up at Annie because she's holding his legs, it's both terrifying, but it's hilarious because it's so over the top, and it's also blood that just looks like red water. But what's happening. You don't need to go, well, that's an awful lot of blood. It's like you bury yourself in this world that I've said before is very much like a comic book movie. At times, I'm sitting there thinking, this movie came out in 1987. It seems so far ahead of its time. I understood what you said earlier, Smith, when you said about visually, it feels like a bit of a throwback, and I get that. But at the same time, like Sam Raimi's directing just feels light years ahead. I mean, when you compare to some modern directors, like, can we just get Sam Raimi directing all the movies? But I honestly think this is an incredible movie. I could watch it over and over again. I understand that it might not be for everyone, but then not every movie is. But yeah, I'm going to give this a straight 10 because I love it. I can't fault it, man. I love this movie. It's
wow. There you go. A 10 out of 10. Evil Dead 2 from E-Talk. Yeah. We don't get many 10s, but when they come, it's a special moment. Nige. Are you going to give us a special moment, or are you just going to give us a moment?
that sounds gross.
Just me, you, and a tree.
Oh dear. Maybe I won't now. Yeah, so I hadn't actually watched Evil Dead 2 in quite a while, but as said, it's a film I own on DVD, and I don't own that many DVDs, only ones that I really, really enjoy. So going into watching this, I thought I'm probably going to rate this film quite highly, and nothing about watching it today made me change my mind in that. Like Etox summed it up really, really well, but yeah, Bruce Campbell is an absolute legend, and he's absolutely fantastic in this film. The film it's not very long, it's tight, it does what it needs to, it's atmospheric, Raimi's direction is fantastic. The script, again, there's not that many lines, but it does what it needs to. I think some of the additional sort of cast members are a bit wooden, a bit hammy, but they kind of suit the film perfectly, so it doesn't really detract from anything at all. I would say some of the special effects probably have dated a little bit in terms of like that kind of stop motion kind of style, but it just works so well in the context
of the film.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, and like the gore, whilst like it's kind of ridiculous, it's ridiculous in a good way, not in like, as I mentioned before, kind of like a Saw way. It leads into what I think is a brilliant sort of film after this, Army of Darkness, as well. But like I remember showing this film to a couple of my friends, like probably when I was about, I don't know, like 21, something like that, and they got me to turn it off after like half an hour because they're like, what is this shit? Like, some people just don't get this film. And there's something about it that you either get sort of swept up in it and come along for the ride, or you just think a couple of loonies have taken a camera to a random cabin and tried to make a film. And they're probably both right, but for me, it's a film I love. It's not quite a 10 for me. It is a bloody brilliant film, though, and I would heartily recommend it to anyone. And it's not even you have to watch it a Halloween film, although maybe that'll add to the charm. I think it's a film for all times of the year. Watch it on Christmas Day, for goodness sake. I'm going to say 9 out of 10.
Another big score. Nice. This was interesting going into this film because obviously I watched The Evil Dead last year, which is it's weird. It's the same film, but it's a very, very different film. So when I was turned on Evil Dead 2 to happily watch this film, I would say, because I enjoyed The Evil Dead. There
is no "the" on this. It's just Evil Dead 2 as well. Evil Dead dropped, and then Evil Dead 2. It's interesting,
isn't it? They've dropped the Evil Dead 2. But yeah, I was kind of thinking, okay, so at the start of the film, I've got to be honest, I was quite confused because I thought haven't read much about this film apart from almost like the kind of stuff about the first one being such a kind of cult film and the kind of filming techniques and all the rest of it. So we start off and I'm like, what the fuck? Why is he going back to the house? He's got a girlfriend. And I was a bit confused. And we go... I'm going to start off with my criticism first on this, by the way. My main criticism of this film is that if you don't watch the first one, which is weird to say after just hearing Etox's review and he's not seen the first one, but my criticism is there is no story and there is no backstory whatsoever, and I still think that you could probably get a little bit more into this opening 15-20 minutes to give these characters just a tiny bit more depth to make, to go into that film before we get all the silliness and stuff. So when I started watching this, I was like, oh man, I'm not sure I'm going to like it. However, here's the but. Once I kind of get into that journey, I'm so swept along with the cinematography, the editing, the prosthetic, the effects. Bruce Campbell, who I've barely seen, I've obviously only seen the other film that he's made. And obviously from a kind of filmmaking point of view, it's like a 10 out of 10. Usually this sort of horror film, which is why I've put off watching this sort of film for so many years, doesn't appeal to me. But I didn't really realise what this film was, if that makes sense. I didn't really realise it was a kind of comic horror. I thought I was going to be watching, like you referenced Saw and Hostel and stuff. I thought I was just going to be watching like one of those sort of horror films, which is why I've kind of stuck away from it. But yeah, that comedy side, it works. And I really enjoyed this film a lot more than I thought I was going to. And I really enjoyed, the first one as well. I can't think what I'd give that. So yeah, I'm not quite as high. I feel like one thing I would say is what I did say. I feel like the more you watch this film, the probably better it gets. So it kind of gathers that momentum and you get like this kind of, like you were quoting quotes from the film that I barely knew, but you know what I mean, like the fact that you do that kind of it elevates it. So anyway, I'm still going to give it a very good score. I am going to give it an 8 out of 10.
Wow.
For a first watch. So yeah, I'm also going to say I really want to watch I keep saying Prince of Darkness, but that's a different film.
That's the John Carpenter film, which is also an absolute banger.
Army of Darkness. But yeah, anyway, enough about what we think. What do you think? Get in touch. I bet people listening to this would love this. I hope so. Email us on offradarpod@gmail.com. Tweet us.
I'm sure Bruce Campbell must be on Twitter. Tweet Bruce Campbell. Be like, Bruce.
He's got better things to do because he's a bloody hero.
That's true.
He's got evil
work shit
to fight. But yeah,
he's got Deadites.
Deadites.
Let us know what you thought about Evil Dead 2.